Speed up 8. Okay, Carrie?
Paul Galanti interview, take 1.
Perfect. So, actually, I think just to get started and warm up, I'm going to have you read or recite High Flight, if you would, sir.
Okay. I think I remember that. I slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silver wings. Sunward I have climbed, whirled, twirled, and spun, and done 1,000 things you've not dreamed of. Up, up, long delirious burning blue, I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, where never lark nor even eagle flew. I bowed my hand, touched the face of God, etc., etc.
Beautiful.
No.
And then the other poem there, Invictus. Would you know that?
I did, yeah. This is very short.
And wait till these hold the paper steady before you start to speak, so that we don't hear the rustling. Okay, there you go.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Beautiful, Paul. And then there's words there that we are etched into the war memorial. If you could read those,
My quote?
Yes, sir.
Let me tell a little story that led up to that.
Do.
We were filming a documentary paid for by Boeing and the Air Force Academy.
I'm sorry, sir. If you know the quote, would you mind putting the papers down, because they're interrupting the sound? Is that in your shot?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I would love to hear the story, sir. Hold on 1 second till Kent's ready. Yes, sir.
We were filming a documentary for the Air Force Academy in the class of '64, and Boeing Corporation paid for it. But it was a big hoodoo, and they had these airplanes flying through the clouds, and they're playing to take it, those old World War II things, pretty girls' eyes, and it went on and on. But this whole thing went through there, and lots of action shots, mostly the Air Force Academy, and mostly Air Force guys. And it came time, the rolling of credits at the end, and the producers had asked me, he said, what 3 things did you learn? I said, I learned a lot more than 3 things. No, 3 things, give us 3 things. He said, well, I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. Then, no matter how tough I thought I had it, somebody else always had it tougher. And I was thinking. And then finally, they said, come on, give us a 3rd one. So it just popped in my head. There's no such thing as a bad day when there's a doorknob on the inside. And they loved that. So anyway, that's actually engraved in concrete. I've said a whole lot of stuff that's much more astute than that, but that's the one they chose.
Ah, beautiful. And then the quote that we photographed you under, the what is it called, Carrie?
It's the Freedom Flourish quote. It's there on the page.
Okay.
Do you want me to hand it to him?
Yeah, it's down here now, but it was, I'm not sure if I think that's for the whole, all those exhibits, all those different quotes around. The only one I have was that one about the doorknob.
Carrie's going to hand this to you if you just read this, because it's a beautiful sentiment and expresses a lot about.
It's just this one's on the exterior of the war memorial.
Yeah, oh, okay. Tell all who enjoy freedom of the deeds and sacrifices required for freedom to flourish.
Beautiful. Okay, sir, you could set that down. Well, first off, more than anything, I want to thank you so much for what you're doing for us and for future leaders and members of our military. As we talked about, what makes this project different is that its primary audience is the military. And there are incredible lessons in leadership, in working together and overcoming failure, so many things that modern military leaders and future leaders of tomorrow need to understand. And the ways that you and your fellow former POWs adapted to harsh conditions and not only survived, but actually thrived. You know, one of the things that the Navy psychologists and others who were doing the testing down in Pensacola found was that almost to a man, although all of you would not say you'd like to repeat the experiences you had in Vietnam, you all said you came out better men than you went in. And Jim Stockdale was telling me about when CAG got to the tarmac and was supposed to give a speech, and Sybil was in the background, and she could hear him saying something which was on some level upsetting to her, but she also understood it. He said, my time in Vietnam was the best of my life because I knew the best of human beings there and the worst, but I knew the absolute best. And of course he was referring to all of you. So we want to dig into that and find our way into your memories and your experiences and your wisdom that you learn from those experiences. At any point, if there's something that occurs to you, feel free. And I don't pretend for a moment that I've got an exhaustive set of questions, but I hope that they're probing for you, sir.
Okay.
To begin with, if you would, because we're going to intercut all this, my voice won't be in the final edit. So if I ask you a question like, what does freedom mean to you? Then kind of try to remember to repeat, freedom means to me, that, that kind of thing, so that I'm not, the question is incorporated in the answer, okay? To start with, if you would, sir, give us a kind of overview, kind of a sketch of the chronology of your time from being shot down to your release, just in general pieces, like, I was in Dogpatch, or I was in,
Okay. I'd been on cruise almost 9 months. The USS Hancock was not the nicest set of accommodations, but it worked fine. It was, no air conditioning, but we could go sleep in the wardroom or the ready room if we had to. And those were air conditioned. But it was, I'd flown over 90 missions, and I was looking forward to coming home. The ship was supposed to go home. We'd had rumors that they were going to fly all the pilots back, all the air crews back, the commercial, and let the sailors and the black shoes ride the boat back. So I was looking forward to that. I was the finest guy I'd met in the Navy the entire time was my flight leader, Lou Chatham, a retired admiral now. He was a Blue Angel, and as soon as we got back, he and I were going to go fly together, fly out to Pensacola, and I was going to audition for the Blue Angels with his sponsorship. And then my skipper was an honor graduate of test pilot school, later commanded it. He wanted me to go to test pilot school, so I'm sitting there with these two options coming in, and the cruise had gone well. We hadn't lost anybody. We lost a few airplanes, but hadn't lost anybody. And lo and behold, I was the maintenance aircraft division officer in my shops, airframes, power plants, the electricians, the check crews, and parachute riggers. Did most of the important stuff with airplanes to keep them flying. So the airplane I was picked for that day.
I'm sorry. I've got a little cough issue that. Okay. So.
Okay. Anyway, I was aircraft division, so I knew everything about every airplane in the squadron. And the one I picked for myself that day in the flight, I didn't want anybody else to fly it, was the only one that was actually broken. The A4 is an airplane. You can disconnect.
Sorry, Paul.
That's right.
Let me take a cough drop.
Okay.
All right, excuse me.
Okay. The A4 was the only airplane, an active duty jet airplane. You could actually disconnect the hydraulic controls and fly it manually. It was like driving a Mack truck with no power steering. Well, I had a big sign on the yellow sheet, the maintenance sheet for this airplane, because I'd flown the test flight on it. We downed it, and the skipper said, "Bring it back, we need it. It flies okay if the hydraulics are okay." And I had a big sign on the yellow sheet saying, "Do not disconnect this aircraft." Well, I'm not sure I knew that it was a lousy day. The first flight that got out that morning, they all came back. They dropped their bombs in the water and all came back to the ship. And so we were going to brief and go out again. And it was sure enough, there was 693, the airplane with the broken hydraulic disconnect. And so I took that one and got on the airplane, and just mentally noting that during the briefing, they talked about we have a land breeze instead of a sea breeze, and so we had a sea breeze instead of a land breeze, and I said I could mentally think I got to get further out to sea before I eject if I have to do that, and I roll in. I got to lean more out toward the water than toward the land when I'm dropping the bombs. And that was all in my calculation. So unbeknownst to me, we took off. As soon as we got airborne, the skipper said, "Can't set a target you're going to. You can't get into it. The weather's too bad. We're going to hit the railroad crossing at Dong Ha. We're going to hit the railroad yard at Quy Vinh." And Sonia, we've been there a million times. And so we're going for this will be a piece of cake. And went in, and we pulled up in the pattern like the dive bombing run. Lou Chatham rolled in, Ron Sininger rolled in, Don Gregg rolled in. Except that my gun sight didn't work. And so I didn't have anything to drop with. So I said, I'll just fly on Don's wing. And I pulled myself up right behind him like this. I came down in formation with him, very close. As soon as his bombs came off, I hit the pickle and almost immediately heard a huge explosion behind my head. And it yanked the stick back, and the nose popped up. And all of a sudden, all the little red flags came in the instruments, which meant no electricity. And I heard rap, 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 and which I presumed was the turbine blades coming off the airplane and going through the skin. And I said, this is not good. And then I looked down, and both of the oil pressure gauges went down to zero. And I said, uh-oh, got to disconnect it. And I couldn't control it at 180 knots during the test flight. And I said, now I'm going almost 600 miles an hour, 500 knots. And pulled the disconnect handle. The airplane wrapped up, twisted and turned. I think it broke apart. And I had no time for a radio call or anything else. And it came out of the parachute. It popped, and as it was coming down, I felt a sting on my neck. And then I saw all these little things look like high-speed bugs zipping by me, that's what tracers look like from the receiving end. And I felt that sting, and then hit the ground in a big clump, and it was welcome to North Vietnam, bleeding profusely. These were bullets, and I said, "This is not good. This is not going to be a good day."
You were then,
That's the end of that story. No, I'm on the ground. You want me to just keep going?
yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Just to give me an overview now of where you landed up first, what times you spent and where.
Okay,
What was your first contact with another American?
okay, this was a place. It was halfway between Hanoi and the demilitarized zone, about 100 miles south of Hanoi, 100 miles north of the demilitarized zone. And we flew over 1,000,000 times. But it occurred to me that I'm at war, but I don't even know what this country smells like. I didn't know before I landed on the ground. And it had a very familiar Japanese rice paddy smell, using human manure for fertilizer. And as I came down the parachute, they could see me. I was up high in the air all by myself, and they're all coming in from all different directions like this toward me. And I had ejected. I saw the airplane splash in the water. I was far enough out for that, but the sea breeze blew me in. I watched the beach go back under my feet, and knew I was going to land on the land, which is not good. And I saw all these people coming toward me, and I said, "This is probably not going to have a good ending." But I came on down and landed, pretty badly banged up, and I felt something wet and sticky on my neck, and I'd been shot in the back of the neck, and had blood all over my neck and flight suit, and I was hiding in the only bush around, and they're all heading toward it. And the guy that came up closest to me was a young boy. He looked like a young boy. He was probably 20 years old, but he had a rifle in his hand, and he's shaking like a leaf. And I said, "I don't want to make this guy nervous." My original plan, and practice mentally many times, was to take my little pistol, and it's 5 rounds for them and 1 for me. And I started thinking about that. I said, those aren't really good odds. And so I held the pistol like this, and as this young guy came walking up, I cleared my throat, flipped the pistol out, and walked out with my hands in the air and cracked up. I had just, back then, ethnic jokes were really funny, and somebody had been talking about an Italian war hero. You know how to tell an Italian war hero? His hands are in the air and his pistol's on the ground. And here I was standing there, Italian, hands in the air and pistol on the ground. I said, "I'm a frapping Italian war hero." Welcome to North Vietnam.
Wonderful story. So were you first taken to Hello?
No, this was, like I said, 100 miles south of Hanoi. There was they took me in the wrong direction for a couple of hours walking, and went into what looked like a schoolroom. And there was an interrogator who spoke English, not very well, but he spoke English. So I figured to say, well, he doesn't speak English that well, I'm just going to act like I'm dumb. So I kept trying to do that, and he slapped me around, beat me a couple of times, and then asked me a couple of questions. I said, I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just a JG, Lieutenant JG. I don't know anything. And he said, "No, I'm not allowed." He beat me up pretty bad. Sent the guards in, put me in the ropes for the first time, and I just I said, "I know what you're doing. I can't tell you. I don't know. And so I kept doing that. And finally, they just stopped. And I heard an American voice talking to a Vietnamese. So I figured there must be some kind of a POW camp. And it turned out they were two American Air Force pilots, the same crew, Daryl Pyle and Al Lurie. And I couldn't talk to him. I saw him once or twice. One guy was like a basketball player, 6'4" or 6'5". and the other guy was 5'8" or 5'9". And so I knew we were in the same camp. They stuck me in a little hooch all by myself, and just stayed there. And then we started the trek at night. I never saw that particular English speaker again. But the three of us started the trek north. We were separated. We couldn't talk to each other, and it took 12 days to get from there up to Hanoi, and we arrived on the 29th of June, which is only famous because that was the first day we bombed Hanoi, and the Vietnamese were not real happy with that turn of events. Going up, we just walked, and sometimes we get a ride in a Jeep. It would take us a little while, and then or some kind of vehicle. We were blindfolded most of the time, but I could see under the blindfold, and I could see the kilometer markers. So I knew we were heading toward Hanoi. And we couldn't travel during the daytime, but at night is when we'd start walking. Again, it's only 100 miles, but it took us 12 days to get there. So it was not a good time for walking. And rolled into Hanoi, got there about midday, and right after they threw me into this, I guess it didn't look like a prison, it looked like some kind of big, it was the wallow of the prison, but it didn't look like it to me, looking under my blindfold. And went inside, they threw me in a cell. It was awful. I mean, it just smelled of death, and there's blood all over the walls. Filthy. Of course, we were filthy anyway. I hadn't washed for almost 2 weeks, and they just threw me in there, and I didn't hear anything for 3 days. And they gotta feed me sometime. Well, the reason they didn't, that sound we heard as we were coming into prison were jets overhead dive bombing at very high speed, and AAA guns going off. It was the first bombing mission in Hanoi, and they didn't know what to do. The war had been going on for about a year and a half, and all of a sudden here we arrive in Hanoi, and we're suddenly bombing Hanoi. There must be something wrong here. Those signs must have been wrong. And I didn't get any food or water for about 3 days. I had a little bit to drink going north, but I was totally dehydrated. And after about 3 days of that, I said, I better get something. I'm gonna need something to eat or drink. So I started yelling, and the guard came in, looked surprised to see me, and I think they forgot about me. I think they were too wrapped up over the bombing raid to realize what was going on. And so after 3 days of no food, a 100-mile walk, they started the interrogation. And it took about, I guess, 4 days total. And I was really in bad shape by then. I was starving and feeling bad. Then on the fourth day, it was a Saturday, I think it was a Saturday, maybe it was a Tuesday, they came and brought in some filthy brown clothes and took these brand new blue clothes they'd given me, pajamas, and said, put these on. And so they're filthy, they're all bloody, and they've got, they're just filthy. And I put them on, and they threw me back in the cell. They brought me, I think, a crust of bread and a little jug of water. And that night, they came and got me, hauled me out of the place blindfolded, and I'm thumping along in these brown, filthy pajamas, and they felt something on my wrist. They clicked handcuffs on one side of a handcuff on my wrist, and I'm hooked up to another American, and I could tell he's clearing his throat, and so forth. And as soon as they put us back in the back of a Jeep, still handcuffed together, and the fellow I was sitting next to leaned over and said, I'm Robbie Reisner, Air Force. Who are you? I said, oh my God, this is the guy who was on the cover of Time magazine. I remember seeing it because the magazine had this, it was about the Vietnam War, the first issue. They'd had anything about it. And right back in the middle of the front page was this Air Force pilot, a squadron commander, F-105s, named Robbie Reisner. And I remembered from my childhood growing up in Japan, I got to meet all the Korean aces because that's the same hotel we used for R&R. And my dad and our family and me. And
Thank you.
I have hot water.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
that's right.
This is fascinating. It's such a good.
What, did you, you got a cold? You didn't sound bad yesterday.
No, it's, I have a little tickle in my throat that's been going on for a couple of months. It's not a cold.
So it's hot water with honey.
Great, thank you.
Because
That sounds like a song, country song.
he's coughing up the best parts.
And it's terribly embarrassing. Okay, thank you, Paul.
Okay.
So Robbie Reisner.
So it was Robbie Reiser. I mean, and he was, it turns out he was the senior ranking officer in the camp. They brought him back there for something, and I'd heard him, he was talking to the whole group. They told us to keep quiet, and it's obviously other people in these other cells. And he was just, we weren't supposed to say anything. And he was talking and telling everybody about the camp lore and all this other stuff. And anyway, all of a sudden I'm hooked up to him, and he just kept talking. They kept hitting him on the head saying, stop, keep silent, must you once keep silent. And he was just kept talking to me, and he told me everything. And I kept thinking about that. I said, wow, this is really something. This guy he was an ace in Korea, and that's all I ever wanted to be, was a pilot. And it started back then. It was fourth grade, actually. This is fifth grade, and I'm seeing all these, the MiG aces, all of them were using this hotel. And I'd go up and talk to them, and sometimes one of them would play the piano, and they'd all start singing these songs, and I didn't know the words to some of them. So I asked my mother, and she said, never mind, you don't need to know that, the word. The fighter pilot songs, and never realizing the irony of this, though, through the years. When I was a little kid, I went through there, and that's all I wanted to do. From then on, everything I wanted to do was fly jet fighters, and now here I am, right smack in the middle of this enemy camp. I mean, it smelled awful. It was. I had woke up a couple of nights when I was stuck in that cell, even before the interrogation, with a rat on my chest, which gets your attention, a big rat the size of a cat, and it gets your attention. But here I am talking to one of my boyhood heroes. He was a MiG ace, one of the guys I wanted to be like.
And Robbie, was he able to communicate important information to you about what you were to expect?
He told me about the tap code, and I got that in my mind. He explained it very quickly. It's a picture of matrix 5 by 5, A, B, C, D, E across the top, F, G, H, I, J, skip the K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And for you skip the K, so if you have to spell a word with a K in it, you use a C. But A would be the first row, first column, and B would be first row, second column, and B. C would be first row, third column, and also down all the way till Z was 5. And for a K, you could use K was, and that's all right. That was a K, it's third row, the first column. And the way you would tap that was put a little syncopated beat in it, split that first beat, and instead of going, you'd go. And that's the nuance of our little tap code.
And what was the importance of, also, Robbie Reisner communicated something else to you about?
He said he was talking about, I told him, I feel lousy. I did. I thought I was the only traitor in the whole bunch, and I was turning myself in to the senior officer. He said, they've broken everybody. Put this in your mind. You tolerate torture only to the point of permanent physical disability. When you can't take any more, you start lying, and you keep lying and lying and lying and lying. The Air Force guys have been taught that in survival school, and Navy Marines didn't. And we were honor bound not to give them anything. And so I think the Air Force was a little more realistic. They realized that if they want something out of you, they're going to get something out of you.
And what did this mean to you emotionally? Let's talk a little bit about this, because we went into this war, as pilots, you went into this war feeling like you were John Wayne. You could handle anything. The Vietnamese captured you. They force you through brutal torture to give up more than just name, rank, and serial number. For each and every one of you, that is as devastating a thing as anything. And in many ways, the most pernicious thing the Vietnamese did was to isolate you after you broke, where you lie in your own feeling of self-failure as if you had betrayed your country.
Yep.
Talk to me about that and what it meant to you when he said these words to you.
Oh, that was like having the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. I'd been agonizing over that because I was sure. I mean, I didn't crack when I was out in the boondocks with that guy who didn't speak English very well. And they brought me in the camp, and they were pretty doggone rough for those 4 days of initial interrogation. And I finally had the ropes on me. I had to take them off. I can't take it. And my arms felt like they were on fire. And they finally, the guy took them off. And the way it went, it was like this. He said, "What is your name?" The code of conduct, name, rank, serial number, date of birth. "What is your name?" I told him. "What is your rank?" I told him, "It's Lieutenant JG. "What is your serial number?" And I told him that's a different one than the one Social Security number then. I told him that, and then he said, "What is your date of birth?" And I told him that. He says, "Are you married?" I said, "I can't answer that question." And he paused, and he like that, snapped his fingers, and this big guard, I forget what we called it, a big stoop or something like that. He came in, he was the torture sergeant, and he came in and put the ropes on me, and they walked away. Everybody walked away. And also I said, God, this really hurts. And they pulled him around until my elbows were touching my back. And this is awful. And I kept going, wait. And they'd done this sort of down in the countryside when I was coming up. But this was a whole lot worse. This guy was a real pro, and oh my God. And so finally, I said, "Bao cow." I was supposed to use that to call him. And somebody came back in. He said, take him off. "You will talk?" I said, "Bao cow, take him off." They finally took him off. And so they put me back on the stool again, facing him. And they said, "What is your name?" "Paul Galanti." "What is your rank?" "Lieutenant, United States Navy." "What is your Social Security number?" 2305947. "What is your date of birth?" 11 July 1939. "Are you married?" "I can't answer that question." And in came the sergeant, put the ropes on again, and this time he didn't take them off until I'd answered a lot of questions. And it was all, I mean, I don't think I gave him anything classified, but I really felt bad. And that's why when Robbie said, "They've tortured all of us, just tolerate torture to the point of disability, and then lie, just do everything you can to get out of there." And that's why I felt so good, because from the time that guy cracked me for the first time, which is about 2 hours into the initial interrogation, I was miserable. Everything hurt, and I felt bad. And so it's the biggest uplift I ever had, ironically, on the way to the Hanoi March.
So it's safe to say Robbie Reisner gave you your first instruction in the Hanoi prison system leadership. That you, through this experience, realized the importance of getting that message out. Because as I understand, the first order of business when a new shoot down would happen is get to him, get his name, get his rank, get him the tap code.
Yep. Well, that's what I did when I was in Heartbreak, the first camp. Heartbreak the first time. You know, there were a couple of guys in there. Actually, ironically, I knew 3 of the 4 of them. And one of them was my neighbor at the base housing at Lemoore. Another was on our ship. And so we just were chatting a little bit. We didn't have anything to talk about because we all knew stuff. And we didn't learn the tap code then, but that's when Robbie came into the camp just before the Hanoi March, and he was talking to the whole group. It was quiet. They were going crazy because it's the first air raid they'd experienced. And so I don't think they were watching us very much. Robbie knew that. And so he was talking to us after he introduced himself, introduced we all said who our names were. And he went through the tap code, went through name ranks. So it says, you're going to be forced to do more than name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. And so when you get to that point, tolerate torture, don't give it to them for free, but don't let yourself be disabled from the torture because we're not going anywhere for a while.
And as a leader, as a military leader, a man of rank, in the years that would follow, you would apply this lesson again and again and again. Now, Mike Cronin told me a story about you being called in to wash his clothes. Could you tell me that story, sir, if you would?
Yeah, they brought me back. I moved out to the zoo after the torture session, shortly after the parade. And they brought me back because on the way up north, I saw an old guy who came in and was looking at us. And so I asked him in French, if he spoke French. He nodded. And I said, "Can you get me a boat, bateau? Give me a boat. I want to get out of here." And he said, "No, I can't do that." And he just said he's the village cadre. He was the Communist Party, the Workers' Party representative in the village. But they knew that I spoke French, or at least had a working knowledge of it. And so, I forget when it was, August. He brought me back to the camp. This was June. They brought me back to the camp and put me in one of those cells again. Oh, here we go again. And I said, "We have a French reporter come. You must talk to her." "About what?" "She wants to know about the camp. You must tell her. You must tell her about the camp." "Well, I'll tell her about the torture and bad treatment." No. You're not allowed to say it. I said, "Well, I'm not going to say anything." And so I didn't say much. I did tell her who I was and everything. But that was in August. It was hot, sweaty, miserable. And I remember she had a big boil on her forehead. And I just kept staring at it. And she didn't like that a bit. And so anyway, I think they wanted to take me somewhere. They wanted me to do something really nice and have a nice meal, and that never happened. I just sat there. I said, the Vietnamese people are treating you very nicely. And I said, they give me food. Are you? But you killed their women, children, everything. I didn't say anything. You dropped bombs on their countryside. Here I am, and that was it. I wouldn't talk, and so went away, and they kept me in that camp for a couple or 3 months. I think trying to teach me how to do interviews better, and which I never did another one. And God, I haven't thought about that for a long time. They had me in that room, and finally they brought in a fella who had been on my shutdown 5 weeks before I was, from my ship, Hancock. I knew him not well. He was a photo pilot. He was in the air wing, but I didn't know him that well. And so we ended up being pretty good. But they just kept us there in that cell, basically doing nothing except when they'd bring a new prisoner in, they'd be giving him pajamas, and they'd go and do whatever they're going to do with him, and then we had to wash the pajamas and clean mud off the boots, mud and blood and all that other stuff. And that's how I met Al Carpenter. I knew he was there because I watched his flight suit. I don't remember doing Mike Cronin's. I don't think I had anything written on my flight suit when I was flying. No name tags or anything. But I had, several of them did. I don't remember Mike's. But I'd go out there, and as soon as I hear it all quiet down, the guards weren't there anymore, I'd get them started talking again, because I knew how you could do that. Tell them who I was, and get their name if I could, teach them how to tap, and the camp lore, and that's the first time I think they probably ever heard the orders that Robbie Reisner gave to me is tolerate torture only to the point of permanent disability. Don't get yourself crippled at the torture. And if you have to, you're going to have to give them something. So just make up lies or whatever you want to do, so you're deemed not trustworthy.
Wow, beautiful. You had a credo in the Hanoi prison system that was part of what helped you all, which was, I am my brother's keeper. Can you speak to me about that? This incredible sense of unity and brotherhood that you share. Can you talk to me?
Well, I think that was pretty much inculcated in everybody in the military then. I mean, that's what we learned. It's you and your buddies. You don't. I didn't fight the war for LBJ. I didn't fight it for McNamara or Dean Rusk or even the U.S. It's just that these are my guys, and you stick up for them. And whenever, I mean, this happened 3 or 4 times, when somebody gets sick and start talking about it, then we'd all start yelling in the camp and just make a big racket. And the camp commander would just go absolutely nuts. But he typically would get whoever was hurting some kind of medical treatment. That was, I think it was probably, I used to agonize thinking about when somebody was hurt. Now you can tell, I mean, their guys don't cry. These guys are screaming, and they're really getting hurt. And so at the risk of having yourself go through that, you start yelling and get them to stop till they finally knock it off, or get him out of the camp, or do something. I'm not sure. We never had that inculcated as a credo per se. It was just there. We just did it.
It's part of being part of the military.
Unity over self. CAG Stockdale's marching orders, which I got shortly after this episode passed through me. He put this together because they're trying to get people to talk on the camp radio, which then they tape it and they put it up over Radio Hanoi. He's trying to get them to stop doing that. And his marching orders are a little simpler than the Code of Conduct. It was an acronym that spelled BACK US. And B was no bowing in public. A was stay off the air, don't make any broadcasts. C, admit no crimes. K, don't kiss them goodbye with a statement. And finally, US was unity over self. And that was the credo. And we didn't call it that, but it was our own little self-marching orders that Stockdale passed down through the chain of command once it was firmly established that he was the senior guy. And we pretty much lived up to that the entire time. No bowing in public. They did that to humiliate us, which is why the POW flag, when we came home, the POW flag has the head bowed. And almost all, I mean, it really, so what the hell is that? I didn't know what it was. And they now have an MIA flag that somebody made with the head up, looking defiant, instead of with the head down. No bowing in public, stay off the air. They made people do that anyway, but guys would screw it up. And my favorite was one of my cellmates, Al Brudno, who was, I think, valedictorian of his class at MIT. A brilliant guy. He wanted to fly with the Thunderbirds, and he wanted to be an astronaut. And so he got stuck in the backseat of a fighter as a co-pilot, which that was a bad decision the Air Force made. But Al was a little guy, and they would force him to go on the radio, but he would put on a Jewish accent, and he'd say, they would say, "What you must tell us what do you think about how do we have holiday today?" And I would say, "Yes, we had holiday today. They give us food." And the pause. He says, "No, but it's good food. It's good food." Yes, it was. It was good food. In the Brudno household, we call that a BFD, for big fine dinner. And of course, everybody knew what that was. And so I'm not going to say it here while your camera's rolling, but big something deal. And he did one. My favorite, the one he did was he was talking about his Ho Chi Minh's birthday, May 19th. And so I was reading something on the radio, and he said, "Today is wait a second. Today is the birthday of President Ho Chi Minh," and it went right over their heads. They're reading it, looking right at it, and he's just screwed that up. He talked about Cuba. I always use the same adjective for the noun. Cuba was that bastion island, and so that became the bastard island. And they're sitting there looking at their thing while he's reading. It went right over their heads. And he was better at doing that than anybody. And a small victory, but it was a victory.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's a wonderful thing. These small victories laced together formed a battle behind bars that you waged on a daily basis, and you got strength from each other in that. Like, you would hear this thing come over the camp radio, and you might have been through a tough torture session or just whatever, isolated, and talk to me emotionally about how this, and it goes back to this idea of unity over self.
Well, some of my favorite things happened while the propaganda, Hannah was doing her thing on the radio, and every time she came out with something that was absolutely preposterous, it was usually somebody, a lot louder voice than mine, would say, "Horse shit!" And, everybody around the camp would crack up, and the Vietnamese didn't know what the hell that was. This guy's just sneezing, everybody starts laughing. And that would happen a lot. People would, let me think of another one. We used to, they make us sweep, for humiliation, I think, and these big whisk brooms, that we'd sweep the courtyard. Well, that's like a PA system. It's the tap code, except you're doing it, everybody can hear it. You go, shh, 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 shh. And you could tap out the Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and they're sucking their thumbs, the guards were not the brightest bulbs in the chandelier, and they used to play with their rifles all the time. They'd walk around here and go click, 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 and click like that. And every once in a while, click, 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 boom! And they'd fire it off, and then all of a sudden all the guards come running, and this little guy would have to get sent off to hate school and come back breathing fire, and he wouldn't be playing with his rifle anymore. The keys. Well, I'm not gonna. One of there was a cell next door to us. This was back when the big cells toward the end of the war, and also we had all this laughter coming from the other room next to us, And I said, what was that all about? He said, Jojo, the guard, he was screwing the goose. He was in the back, and one of the guys crawled up in the window, was looking down at him, and Jojo looks up, and a bad scene. But he could not look any of us in the face after that. He'd still stand guard duty, and he'd always drop his eyes and look away. And but stupid little things like that. The worst beating I got after the initial torture session was they announced, "Oh, the Vietnamese people, we are so kind to you. We allow you to have package from home." Well, nobody got any, and we kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, I went to an interrogation, and it's different from most of the interrogations. The one that came with the interrogator goes, "Big smile, God, we have your package from home." Okay, he said it's a package about this big, and it had, I forget what that one. It had a little towel that Phyllis had made for me, and sewed on it was a caricature of it's supposed to be me and her and our little dog. And they said, well, that's really something. But then they wanted time to pay the piper, and they said, you must thank the Vietnamese people for allowing you to have packages. No, I don't want to do that. And I said, oh, get back to your room. They didn't say ingrate, but they said whatever. That's what they meant. And so I went back to the room, and I'm sitting there, and there's not much in it. 4 or 5 of these little packs of lifesavers, like they used to give on airplanes. I had 4 little lifesavers in them, and I said, well, nobody else got a package. And I'm not supposed to know that because we're not supposed to be communicating. And so the next day I said, I'm going to go out, and these guys are trying to set me up. And so I went out and the shower and climbed up. I could hear some guys next to me, and pulled up on the side and flipped the lifesavers over to the other guys, and looked down. The guard standing right in the cell with them. And so off I went, and they came back, took everything, all the rest of the stuff, left in my package, and I went on the stool for 10 days, freezing. I just sat there stripped down to my underwear and short underwear, and it's January, and it was miserable. It probably 35 degrees or 40 degrees, and shivering and hallucinations. But I stayed awake for 10 days, listening to every single chime on the Westminster chimes from some building across the street, some old French building, and they turned me loose from that. And it was the worst thing I ever did. And anyway, I was seeing ghosts. I was actually talking to my whisk broom, which was a CIA agent in disguise, and I never had. They're Technicolor, 3D, and I had vivid dreams about all these hallucinations for several months after that, and I came back, and so I figured they drugged me with something. But the Pensacola said, no, when you go past the point of just being tired, being real tired, you have these wild hallucinations. That's normal. So shoot, I thought it was something cool.
You thought it was something cool.
I got wrapped around the axle. What were we talking about?
Well, you actually opened up a place that I want to explore. All of you found you had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, week after week, month after month, year after year. You had to find ways to create as much as you could with that time. You began classes with each other. But let's talk about 2 things. One is the lifeline of the top coat, because it was more than just an instrument of handing down the structure of orders through the camp leadership. It also
There's a life raft.
Speak to me about that.
our tap code is more than just a tap code. We didn't have that much to talk about. I mean, we ran out of news a week after we were shot down. I was out in the boondocks then on the way to Hanoi. I didn't have any news to pass out. We got every day a snippet here, there, and yon from Hanoi, Hannah, and I didn't pay attention to it because it's all lies. I mean, initially the first time they kept talking about these glorious victories of the Vietnamese people and the ignominious defeats of the U.S. aggressors, and I didn't pay any attention to it because I knew it was all lies. But that was a little something. The tap code was different because you could do stuff with that. We didn't have much news to pass around the camp, but we kept everybody appraised of purges, imminent purges. What are they looking for this time? They'd start up every month or two. They'd have some big purge they were starting, and go through the camp and they'd torture somebody to give us information. Then you find out what it's going to be. Then you can figure out other ways to fight it, and so the tap codes what made that possible. And it was really it was the internet. It was our little baby internet in our jail cell, and that was our link to everybody. And it's just like little kids now, you take their phones away from them, or kids, you take their phones away from them, they consider that capital punishment. And to us, getting cut off and isolated, that you couldn't get into the. We managed to get around it some, but you couldn't get along by yourself. You had to have some kind of communication with other friendlies, other Americans.
And as a leader, and in terms of lessons of leadership, that's a huge lesson. I mean, there's something about the connections between human beings that has to be fostered to have a good leadership environment. Can you speak to me about that?
Yeah, well, we're a big group. I mean, we used to have, on the outside, you have Air Force and Navy, a bunch of weenies, those guys, whatever. But it's not really true. I mean, they're brothers in arms. They take the same oath we did. They're different units, different colored uniforms, flying different kinds of airplanes for the most part, till the Air Force finally got smart and started using Navy airplanes, like the F-4. But we were one. But when you get separated, to get split out like that, you don't have anything to fall back on. You need that. You need to have the camaraderie that every military unit has, whether it's a good unit or not. You still have that camaraderie. We learned also that every leadership example I ever had was blown up and exaggerated 1,000 times in that camp. I mean, when you a normal military base, you go do your thing, you do what you're told to do, and you do it as well as you can, and go home. That's it. This was 24/7, and it was a real McCoy, and we didn't want to be the one who let down the rest of the group. And so we constantly trying to find out what's going on, is there a purge? Maybe it's some good news. Let's say good news. The best good news I had there, except for that we're being released, was when somebody got a little sugar package from home in this care gift from that the Vietnamese so benevolently let us receive from our families. It was one of those little sugar packets that they have in restaurants, and it had a picture of Buzz Aldrin on the moon with his flag sticking out straight. It said on the moon, July 20th, 1969, and Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, or something like that. And, well, Neil Armstrong was a Navy pilot. Some of the guys in the room had flown with him. And then Buzz Aldrin was Air Force at test pilot. I said, I think they're both astronauts. And we put that together. And that was a big morale boost to us, because with our little tap code and stuff, we got that around, and so we weren't sure whether they really did plant flags, and that was now our property. But we told the guards it was. We're probably the last people in the world to know about the moonshot. And so we started telling that every once in a while, you'd be out in the big camp, you'd be outside, up at the window, and the guard would come walking along with his rifle, and the moon was like pointing to us, says, American moon, it's ours, it's our moon. And that was a little victory for him. No. And all he knew was these guys came from the same group that landed on the moon. And all he could think of was he's got his little rice ball and his chopsticks, and then maybe he joined the army. I actually gave him a rifle and some ammunition, and that's the only thing he has to his entire possession.
On that note, Ev Alvarez said to me something along the line of that the Vietnamese never really understood the American warrior. They did not understand our sense of humor and the ways, and I thought about it, in a communist culture, for the Vietnamese to get you to say something laudatory about their culture and disparaging about American culture was a great victory, because they came from a communist system where it's all about indoctrination. As Americans, we can't even imagine capturing one of the enemy and needing them to say America's great. It wouldn't even occur to us. We assume a certain greatness about our country that we all buy into, we all believe in, we all hold to. And this was operative for you in the Hanoi prison systems, and it's something that the Vietnamese never really understood how to defeat. Can you speak to me about that?
Yeah, I got one picture one my picture. Somebody else said, they let us keep our photos for a while, and then they had a big purge and took them all back. But one of these camps was this huge swimming pool at Las Vegas. Most of the Air Force guys went through fighter weapons school at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. So there was this big thing like this, and there's all these women in bathing suits. All the Air Force guys in the room knew every single one of them. They were, we managed to identify all the women in the pictures, the photo except one, and it was somebody's wife, or girlfriend. So they all got together and filmed this. And I guess they sent it to a bunch of the POWs. But the Vietnamese couldn't figure out what the hell that pool was. They didn't have anything like that. The only thing they had that big, that had water in it, that's what they drank their water out of. That the water run, because the faucets never worked. And they worked in the middle of the night when nobody else was using them. So there'd be a little come out, they'd fill these big tanks. They thought that was they just act like they had a cup and they were scooping water on themselves, which is the way they bathed. And they just couldn't look at this thing. And they looked at a picture of a little house. It's just a little 50s era base housing house with a little car in front of it. And they couldn't believe it. That was this guy's car. He owns that car. And that's his house. It's not anybody else's house. And no, everybody has a house like that. No. And they had no idea back then what it's like now. Well, they do now, of course, because everybody's got television and whatever, but they still can't imagine what it's like for us. If they realize when everybody has a car, it's not necessarily a good deal, because they all bump into each other and they clog up the roads. Back then, it was usually one car per family, and they couldn't believe that.
And what was it about American humor that I mean, you've already given examples of it, but what was it about American humor that meant so much to the way that you men held yourselves together?
Of course, it's a communist country. That whole concept is stupid. And I'd been not indoctrinated. I learned it growing up in various military training schools. And in fact, when I was a kid over in Japan, Dad was a career Army officer. We had comic books in school over there talking about the communists, and they had the good guys and the bad guys, and G.I. Joe was the good guy, and I forget what they called the North Koreans, but they were the bad guys, and those were in the school. It was I'm sure the office of something or other in the U.S. Army, because the Army controlled the schools. But I wrote a comic strip for our little fifth grade class, and my hero was Dum Dum Dawson, who was an F-86 pilot. He was going out shooting down all the bad guys, and he was a smart guy. And the bad guy was a Chinese guy, a Chinese-looking guy, and He was always Dum Dawson always shot him down. He had about 150 kills, and that was our sense of humor. Well, in Hanoi, we couldn't do that, but we could do is sneeze horseshit. Mispronounce Ho Chi Minh's name as horseshit Min, and little things like that that would irritate the daylights out of them, and it would pump everybody up that heard it. That's all you needed. For me personally, I found out I had a hidden talent, and that if I could think of a subject, a jingle would pop in my mind. And you know, the first one was like Pepsi Cola jingle. Pepsi Cola hits the spot, 10 full ounces. That's a lot, twice as much for nickel to nickel. Pepsi Cola's a drink for you. And I thought about that, and I started writing little jingles in my mind, stupid ones. Later, we got the bigger rooms. Bill Butler played the piano for a hobby, and he taught a music class. And learned it. They got into harmony, and we formed. He drew this huge piano keyboard on the floor, and he put down the bottom C, E, G, C. Gene Smith was our bass. Jim Ray was the baritone. Ray Alcorn was the first tenor, and Ron Masson was the second tenor. He tuned up da 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 da, C major chord, C, E, G, C, and then he would change the chords using our variation of the deaf mute code. That's what they called it back in the signing language. We learned how to do that. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so when you want to do chords, C, love me tender, love me true, that's D. Never let me go, back to G, so G, back. So anyway, and these guys, these singers would jump to the note they're supposed to go on for that particular chord, and it really sounded like they're humming the note, and they jump to the thing on the pitch at the same time. Great training. I told a million choirs about our this thing, and we decided, since we're a communist country, we named it the People's Organ. And I would take these little jingles I'd made up when I was in solitary, and we'd get the four guys together, and we'd work up a little skit with it, and that little jingle would come. Now I'd put the music and in four-part harmony. There was actually a musical written in Richmond. I told that story somewhere. One of the local actors got into it big time, and he wrote this story, the musical called Four-Part Harmony, and the fellow who wrote the music was the musical director for Busch Gardens down in Williamsburg, a neighbor, and it was a very well-received musical done here about our experience called Four-Part Harmony, and that's when they were trying to work it out. None of the actors had ever been in the military, and so decided that this is back in the good old days, back when happy hours at military bases were kind of fun, and so I took all the male actors down to Naval Air Station Oceana, and I got them lunch with the Top Gun squadron. They went over and they sat down at the table, and the guys are coming in there eating, and they're shoveling food down there because they just got a little bit to eat. They're sitting around backwards on the chairs, shoveling in, talking about, these are the instructors they're teaching the pilots how to do air-to-air maneuvering. And then we walked over to the hangar, they briefed, and there's a Marine squadron that happened to be up undergoing the training then. And the instructors, as soon as they get over there, they're not these cocky, wild guys like they were playing, like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. And all of a sudden, they're consummate professionals. And, Joe, you had me right there. He said, but you eased off. If you just kept it going, you're younger than I am. You can pull more G's, and you would have had me. And I said, but you reversed right in front of me, and I got you. You're dead. And these actors are looking at this, and I can't believe this is the way these guys live. Then we went over to the tax range, which is a trailer that has those big radar screens in them that the Kelly McGillis She was the intelligence officer in Top Gun, and they're over there listening to the dogfight live, and the instructors go flying out in 4 different kinds of airplanes, go taxiing out, and they take off. And all the Marines go out in their F-18s, and they take off. And then we're listening to the dogfight live, and watching it on the screen at the same time. And pretty soon, you're Marine 1, you're dead. Marine 2, you're dead. Marine 3, you're dead. Marine 4, you're dead. And they had to break off and come back to the base, and the air come overhead. And they land, in come the instructors, and they break it all off. And anyway, back to this is a Wednesday we did this. And so they got the debriefing, and the same thing. Like I said, they're very professional and everything. Then they get the hell-raising mood, and they all go over to Wednesday afternoon happy hour. And I'd haul the actors all over there. So they got to watch these guys having fun. And they let any female by herself could come into the club anytime they wanted to. They get on base and go in there. Nobody else could. Anybody else had to have an ID card. So these were some wild times, Wednesday afternoon and Friday afternoon. And then not quite as bad as Tom Cruise and his the club in Miramar, but it's pretty close to it. I had to miss one of the POW reunions because got hired as the director of the Virginia Pharmaceutical Association, and they picked for their annual meeting down in Virginia Beach. They picked the same weekend as a party out a reunion out in Texas, Ross Perot's ranch, and it was going to really be cool, and I couldn't go to it. And so the way you get out of that is you put yourself in charge of the reunion. So I did. I just scheduled it for a weekend that was not the same as the Pharmacy Association. And so for this, the pharmacy staff wanted to see if all the people, POWs, were as nutsy cuckoo as I am. And so the staff volunteered to help. So we had professional staff helping put the meeting together. And they did it. They did it right next to, or down at Oceana, and John David was get this facts right. There's a point in my telling that story. The base commander had been on my ship. Of course, he's a captain now and a big shot. I've been out for about 7 or 8 years, and so I said, "Hey, John, we want to have the National POW reunion, Navy and Air Force here." He says, "Great." He said, "Okay, you guys, the planning committee, Mulligan was one of them. You guys be here next Monday. I'm having my department head meeting." So we all went in, and Johnny Allen he flew with the Blue Angels later. He looked like a little Jimmy Cagney. He got up there. He says, "See these guys?" The department head, "See these guys? Us. Whatever they want, they get. Any questions?" Okay, that's enough planning for that. And the chief of staff got all our names. So anytime we needed something, we just called him, and it happened. But there we were at the happy hour bar. There's a big patio. It was a nice day for the reunion. We had a happy hour there, and Johnny told the F-14s, he told the tower, he said, "All departing aircraft are cleared for a maximum performance climb over the officers' club." I mean, that's license to kill. These guys are taking off, they're bending it around and come right over the officers' club and roll it straight up, hit the afterburners. It's like standing underneath the moonshot as it's going up. The Air Force guys had never seen anything like that. This is the biggest one-upsmanship ever. And so we went on and finished it. And I had too much beer to drink, I think.
What was the first time you heard the words "return with honor," or had that brought to your attention through the tap code, and what did they come to mean to you?
I heard that the same time I got Gang Stockdale's missive,
And if you could, sir, if you could include the question in your answer, just "return with honor," if you could say those words, I would appreciate it.
Many of the things we got from that kept us going came from Gang Stockdale. He was an incredible guy. He had a PhD in the classics from Stanford, and he thought about 15 planes above most mortals. I know everybody liked the guy. They loved him. He's a wild man when he got in an airplane, but he's also brilliant. And he gives speeches. He talked way above the heads of most people. He wrote an article for one of the big magazines called "The World of Epictetus." Well, but Epictetus was the slave who was held, and he held everybody together and forced the resistance, and that's where he thought he was. And that whole time in Hanoi, he said, I think that's exactly where I was meant to be. From the time I was a little kid growing up, he said, I think that's where I'm supposed to be. In the world of Epictetus, you have to hold everybody together. And Epictetus held the slaves together in Rome or Greece or whatever. And Epictetus sounds more Greek than Roman. And anyway, he wrote that book. He thought way above us. And when he did his little creed, back U.S., it made total sense. No bowing in public, stay off the air, admit no crimes, don't kiss them goodbye with a statement. And then the U.S. was unity over self. That fit right in with the return with honor. And that was our motto. It just started when I liked it a lot better before we formally became the 4th Allied POW wing, whose motto was return with honor. Because we didn't have a bureaucracy then. Once the Air Force 06s got into it, suddenly we went from having basically a loose civilization to having a full-blown bureaucracy. And we were doing policies, and they're numbered, and we had to pass them around with our little tap code, which it took a long time to do anything anyway. And somebody had to memorize them, then teach them to the group because we all had to learn them. And that was one thing. But the return with honor came out of that drill, and we knew we'd be going home. So we weren't sure how it was going to happen. We didn't think we were going to fight this, all the way through until North Vietnam's on bended knee and begging for mercy. But we're going to walk out here with our heads held high. And if don't kiss them goodbye with a nice statement, that's also where we decided that whenever we're getting released, there are Vietnamese around, no smiles, no laughter. And so we were released. The camp commander got him out there, had all these cameras lined up, and they were announcing the release. And we just stood there. He says, you understand what I say? You are going home. And so they brought the interpreter up there, and the interpreter's talking to the camp commander, and they go down and talk to the senior ranking officer. Said, you understand? You understand. And, back in the gun towers and stuff around, all these cameras taking movies of it. They wanted to get pictures of happy GIs cheering stuff, and there are none of those anywhere from our release.
So even to the last moment, you were still waging this battle of resistance.
Yep. Well, yeah, and one of the movies or the documentaries, Dick Stratton is in it. Have you met Dick Stratton?
We are gonna be meeting him next week, or let's see, in February.
Okay, piece of work. He's really a good guy, but Stratton goes up there. All these guys they're the Air Force guys are greeting us. They're in full uniform. And there's an Air Force colonel there, and he speaks Vietnamese, and the interrogators, including the rabbit, who was one of the most sadistic bastards. He's sitting there translating stuff back and forth. And Stratton goes up and grabs the Air Force guy with the colonel and says, that's a son of a bitch rabbit right there. He says, the guy is torturing people. He says, I know, Dick, get out of here. Just shut up and get out of here. Get on the airplane. And you got to ask him about that. Stratton also wrote a piece called The Boat School Boys. Have you read that?
No, I read the incredibly stupid one about Doug Hegdahl, which was wonderful, but I haven't read that.
The Boat School Boys, that was for me. Because we were living in that cell, passing the word to everybody, and it was Army Navy time, so Stratton was an aviation cadet. He didn't go to the academy. Two of his sons did later, but he we're going through there. We're giving whispering outside. We could do that at certain times of the day or night. And it had these big curtains to block the sound and from coming in. But we could talk up to them. They could the cell next to you could hear it. And so I whispered to him and teaching him the tap code. We don't want him to talk because he's by himself. And the two of us we're in the cell together. We're doing all the washing stuff. We're passing, told them the tap code and all the lore they had to give. The senior officer was the name of this camp, the 4 or 5 other ones we knew about, and then we said, okay, taught them how to tap. Said, okay, tap out your. If you're a Air Force, cough once. The Navy, cough twice, and went all the way. We talked him up to finally realize I got a lieutenant commander, Navy. Flying A4s, and then we said, okay, now we'll teach you how to the tap. We went through the whole tap code and said, now tap us your name. He'll thump on the wall, and it indicated he got caught tapping to us, and they held him off for his first thing. So we knew everything about him except his name. And he tells us later this book called The Boat School Boys, and that's on. You can get that on the internet too. It pops up when you. It pops up. He said, "Here I am." He said, "I haven't talked to any other Americans forever. I'm finally in this big camp, and son of a bitch asked me who won the Army-Navy game." He said, "I didn't have the foggiest idea."
And this is Dick Stratton?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I found out later. We ended up at the plantation with him, and all the photos ended up in that Life magazine. Except we just saw him walking around, and he looked like he was brainwashed. And that was his trick. He was acting like that all the time. And but he was with Hegdahl, and we knew Hegdahl. We were the first ones to talk to Hegdahl. Taught him the tap code, and he was down in a room full of all these old 35 millimeter movie film canisters, and it's a mess. The stuff had all been streamed out, and we had to clean all that stuff up. And we're talking to Hegdahl, and we just heard on the thing talking about Seaman Hegdahl. He fell off his ship, and this cruel captain sailed over the horizon. Well, Hegdahl is saying, "Help me, help me," and just this big story. And so this is the famous Hegdahl that fell off the ship, and this is all in the plantation camp. So we taught him the tap code, and they let him, since he was enlisted, I think. He pretty much had the run of the camp. He could kind of walk around, and they didn't bother him because they figured he was as dumb as their enlisted guys were. And he just ended up spying on them for us. He'd walk around singing songs, but the songs like Doug Hegdahl, my name is Doug Hegdahl, I'm a Navy sailor, da 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 da, and making up all these songs. Well, he's picking up everybody else's name and he's memorizing all his lists and stuff we were giving him. It was and he ended up being ordered to come home by Stratton, and the rest of the guys that came home early they were told not to do it. But Hegdahl was captured in international waters, and they weren't supposed to be holding him anyway.
Carrie, I know that you wanted to stop at 12:30?
Yeah, lunch is ready and it's
Okay.
spread out, so I was like.
You know what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a break, get
Okay.
you some lunch. Yeah, it's so wonderful listening to your stories. I mean, you're just have a beautiful way of expressing this. So we'll take a break here and cut cameras then. Kent, you good? Oh, let's, do we wanna no, we already cited to begin. And Carrie, can you help
You
Paul?
wanna do
get his-
room tone real quick till we know we have
Yeah,
it?
let me take it. Oops.
Okay, we're gonna do, let's do room tone. Do you have the slate? We'll just get it.
Yeah, should I just say room tone?
Yes, just say room tone.
All right, so we're gonna be quiet for 30 seconds. Tell me when you're ready.
You know what, I think I'll cut and start again, just
I
so.
haven't cut yet.
You are not?
I haven't cut yet. You want me to cut?
Well, it would separate it
Okay.
as a file, so let me just cut for a second.
Take two, or if it's